We are ranking every Premier League captain. Now, we did this before. I tell you, boys, it doesn't feel like this long ago, but it was on the 28th of October, 2020, nearly 2.5 years ago. It was the third ever episode of Ranks FC, just after that shift from VL Football Ranks. It was, a long time ago. So I'm excited to get back to this. I'm excited to have a look at it and see where we've got to, who's still around, who's changed. So Sam, I'm just going to hand the floor to you and get in it. We're still here. Still here. I'm still wearing this armband.
I was going to say, most importantly, who's the captain? Have we deposed Jack Collins yet? I'm sure we've made him walk the plank at this point. We tried to fire him the other week.
Yeah, we keep trying to. Yeah, but unfortunately nothing works and I'm not here. So you've had to bring me back on a short-term freelance contract. I'll take the armband straight back. Thanks very much.
Well, your captaincy very much resembles number 20 in our list, Luka Milivojevic of Crystal Palace, who it's a surprise, really, that he is still at the club. They've definitely tried to move past him. He was once very important, but no longer. He has 2 starts this season, and they bought 2 new central midfielders, or loaned and bought 2 central midfielders in January. So Milivojevic, soon to be gone, we assume. 19th, Pontus Jansson. 6 starts for Brentford this season. 4 centre-backs have all played more, so not exactly a key player for them, but holds the armband.
18th. He has been injured. I will give Pontus Jansson some credence in that he hasn't been fit for most of the campaign, but you're right in that there are better players at Brentford.
There are, particularly with the arrival of Ben Mee as well. And Ethan Pinnock just continues to go and go and go. Number 18, Jamal Lascelles, 108 Premier League minutes this season. I was surprised to learn that he's still the captain. They've got this well-oiled machine going on. They've got 14 or 15 very good players. He's not in that collection of players. They've obviously got new leaders on this pitch in form of like Kieran Trippier. I presume he's vice-captain, but Jamal Lascelles still holds the armband, but he's in 18th. Actually, genuinely struggle to remember how good he is because it's been a while. Number 17, it's a little run of centre-backs here, Joe Worrell of Nottingham Forest. He's one of 3 men on this list captaining their local club, so bonus points for that. He's a handy centre-back. He's doing okay on his step up to Premier League level. That's probably as far as I'd go. And then let's round off the bottom 5 here. Number 16, Seamus Coleman of Everton. Hell of a servant to Everton. 34 now, edging towards that twilight part of his career. And I think ultimately they're backup right back for when Nathan Patterson is fit. So I struggled to put Coleman in here because I couldn't figure it out. I wanted to pay him the respect he deserved, but his current level is probably here about 16th.
Yeah, wonderful footballer and an incredible Premier League right back. I think when you look back at the career he's had in the Premier League, especially when you remember that he was signed for 50 grand. As the song goes, from, I believe, Sligo Rovers. So to come in and make the kind of impact that he's had and be at the top level for fullbacks for so long, I agree. But I do think that Seamus is coming to the twilight, as you say, of his career. Would have been interesting to see if Everton had stuck with a back 3, if he would have been able to do the kind of Cesar Azpilicueta, I'm sure we'll talk about him, job on the right-hand side of a back 3. But that hasn't really materialized, and it doesn't look like he's. Well, I think you're right in that he's coming to the end. I don't want to say anything negative about Seamus. I love the man to pieces. He was once very nice to me. Sam once watched me melt when he said hello to me when we were at Millwall away in the FA Cup with Everton, and Seamus Coleman nodded and said how you, and I just and I just sort of melted.
He said how you, didn't he?
How yeah,
and nodded at you, and you just died. It was so cute.
Really nice day. So love Seamus to pieces, but I think, as you say, he's coming to the end. Can't really argue with much of that. I would have probably had Janssen ahead of Lascelles. I think when he's fit, he probably has more of a role to play for Brentford than Lascelles has for Newcastle now. But I'm not going to argue with the 17th, 18th.
Yeah, I mean, it's much of a muchness down there at certain points, isn't it? Lascelles and Janssen and Worrell, I'm like trying to figure out, and they're all like fringe Premier League level centre-backs. Sometimes it's about personal preference on that one. But I'll move into number 15 in the next tranche. 15, we've got another centre-back who is Liam Cooper of Leeds. He's pretty good. That's what I've written down for him. He's pretty good. Good player. And then number 14, Johnny Evans, another centre-back. I'm swimming in them, guys. And this is why it's really hard to figure out. Like, I've got 5 here. Evans, Cooper, Worrell, Lascelles, Janssen. They're all relatively
These are mainly
similar
players I
in their
forgot
level.
were in the Premier League, mate. This isn't really doesn't sound like a captain's ranking to me so far. I'm like actually quite shocked at what the list of names we're going through.
It's quite interesting, isn't it? It's one of those things where you're looking at it and going, who's actually the captain and who's the captain week in, week out, right? And this is the area where you're looking at these and going, none of these people wear the armband on a regular basis because they're not on the pitch. And that's the actual, the crux of it down the bottom of this list. So many club captains are kind of aging servants who have done an absolutely stalwart job for the club, fair play, deserve all the flowers and respect, but no longer have the capacity to actually impact games at Premier League level on the pitch. That's where we're at.
Yeah, I think Evans is the epitome of this one because he's finally sort of slowed down a bit now. A bit like Seamus Coleman, like he's just gone on forever. He's probably been criminally underrated at certain points in his career, Johnny Evans. He's had a hell of a career, but 35 now, had some injuries, and he has dropped off a bit. You're right about that assessment of those players, although Joe Worrell does feel like an exception there because he's a relatively consistent starter for Forest, and he's mid-20s rather than 30 to 35. But I've put Evans in at 14th. And at 13, I've gone for TC. Tom Cairney.
Why?
Doesn't play very much either.
Doesn't play much. He's one of those important players. He comes on every week.
He comes on every week.
He does. He has a role where he comes on at a certain time and helps us see out the game. This is bad. This is a bad call.
We were talking about this on Monday, right? We were talking about the concept of starters and finishers. And Marco Silva, Tom Cairney is one of Marco Silva's finishers. He comes on to control games, to slow the pace down a little bit, to provide incision when Fulham are chasing a goal, and to completely and utterly just keep the ball when Fulham are ahead. And I think that Tom Cairney is playing as like the best football that he's played in ages, to be perfectly honest with you, from a Fulham perspective. But I can see, considering the minutes played and the perception within that, why he would be here. I'll be interested to see who the next couple are, and then I can have an argument with you instead of doing it before I know who's ahead of him.
I mean, I was going to put Cairney lower, but then, Jack, you sent me that video of him scoring that goal against Sunderland, which was just awesome. So
an FA Cup goal against Sunderland has swayed your decision on how good a captain he is.
No, this is just him as a player, and he's nowhere near as influential on this Fulham team as he was a couple of years ago. He's much more influential than he was a year ago, but he doesn't start for you because he doesn't quite fit the manager's style, right? Like, I assume it's the fact that his body
he doesn't fit the style. I think he's just got better players now ahead of him.
Well, that's why he's 13th, mate.
Anyway, as Jack says, we've hit a hot spot here. You'd got away scot-free up to number 13, and obviously we were going to jump on that.
I mean, this is where I get nervous. So at number 12, I've put Azpilicueta, who I still think is probably a better footballer than Tom Cairney, although it is very difficult to judge these things position across positions. Someone else who was dropped off a few levels, but very smart and has been very good. And I'll finish off the next set with number 11, which may be the most surprising name on the list, mostly because I bet most people don't know that he is Bournemouth's captain, Neto. Neto got made captain the other week. The goalkeeper.
Did they take it off Kelly?
They took it off Lloyd Kelly, and gave it to Neto.
Does Lloyd Kelly not start most weeks? Seems a bit rude to take the captaincy off him.
He's been injured, so yeah, I don't know. I know. No, they've given it to Neto. So Bournemouth's 33-year-old Brazilian goalkeeper, as if that's not weird enough as a sentence, is now captain of the football club after 6 months in the area. Interesting. Blimey. And Neto's perfectly fine, serviceable goalkeeper.
Yeah, Neto's grand. Yeah, absolutely no problem with that. It's just weird to think about, like as a concept, right? Like, sorry, come again? What?
Yeah, I know. It's happened like last week. I'm lucky I caught it. Actually, I just googled everyone's name to check. What? Neto?
Yeah, that's strange. Yeah.
The manager, he calls him Nets, which I thought was quite good. Nets. Yeah, Nets is our captain
Neto takes too long to say.
Yeah. Nets is a good influence.
he's on a 12-month contract, as in he literally, his contract expires at the end of the season. They've just given him the armband. That seems like bad squad planning, I'll be honest.
It's a manager trying to save his job, I think. He's trying to save his job, and clearly this is got to be one of his reasons as to how he's trying to do it.
Well, I mean, look, if we can take anything away from these first 10 names, is that it is not a prerequisite to actually play football and have a massive influence on the pitch to hold the armband. And so Neto getting it as a starter is still a better situation than most of the lads at the bottom, Milivojevic and Lascelles and Johnny Evans and stuff like that, who really aren't in the first choice 11s.
Mm. Yeah, I get that. I think it's going to be interesting to see how it goes onwards from here. There's not all that much to argue with, I think, in that, if I'm honest. It's maybe Worrell should be higher, I think, maybe just about a couple of places. I think Lascelles should be below Janssen, but it's only a one-place swap. And I wanted to argue with you about TC, but I don't really have the capacity to, I don't think. I think
we still can. We think he should be in the top 10, so we haven't heard the top 10 yet.
You said top 5 earlier.
Top 5. Well, he's going downwards very, very quickly. But we still see. Right now, the two you put above him, I'm not going to have an argument with, but I'm going to be intrigued to see where you go from here.
Yeah, well, we're still. It's really strange. We don't really get to this is a really solid, very good player until the top 5. It's astonishing, really, how mixed the ability levels are in the armband game. But kicking off the top 10 at 10 is John McGinn at Villa, who actually has had a really tough time of things since he got the armband. Gerrard gave it to him and his form immediately plummeted. But there were a few signs of life under Emery, but he got injured again. But the New Year's Day performance against Tottenham was very good. And I think we can all agree that McGinn remains a very good player.
Yeah, I think Villa need McGinn in that team, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I was actually really surprised not to see him play against Man City at the weekend. Yeah, exactly the kind of player who can really bunker down and deal with that kind of game. So he has his strength for sure. Number 9, I'm grinning because it's a contentious one for you guys. I see Jack is primed for action. At number 9, I'm putting Jordan Henderson of Liverpool. You guys know I'm not his biggest fan, and I think he's dropped a level or two again. He's the best captain on this list, but I think he's in the 9th best footballer.
I think we never maybe made this completely clear, right? It's not necessarily about their ability to lead. We're not ranking them on their leadership qualities vis-a-vis Football Manager. It's more kind of how good are the 20 captains in the Premier League. That much should be made very clear, I think, because I think there are certain names on that list down low. Well, you can to a point. No, it's not.
I feel like for me if I was to sit there and go, who's the best captain, I would need to be captained by all 20 of these people and then relay my personal experience. I've never met most of these guys, so I can't really tell you the dynamics of it. No one can.
Seamus Coleman, number 1, met him.
Yeah, I've met him, but that's it. So I can't. None of us are in a position to truly judge that. We have to rely on what people say and anecdotes. But I can tell you who I think the best footballers are, and I think Henderson is marginally better than McGinn, who is marginally better than Neto, which is a hard comparison to make, given one's a goalkeeper. But you're
doing a decent job.
Kind of where you end up.
You are doing quite a good job. Yeah.
But Henderson
at 9th. This is probably fair. It depends who's above him, but I think above McGinn is probably fair. I think McGinn probably is starting to gain more impact. Obviously, when he's played this season, I think since the break he's been good, but Jordan Henderson remains, and I thought last night's performance against Everton was pretty solid. I think if you put the right people around Jordan Henderson, he still has the capacity to thrive. I just don't think he's capable of doing what he once was capable of doing on a football pitch in terms of getting forward. But you look back at the World Cup, and he was clearly a key element of that side and worked really well. And so that's it. If you put the right people around Jordan Henderson, he still has the capacity to influence football games in a really big way. It's just been tricky getting any sort of midfield out of Liverpool this season. And so therefore, I think his stock has plummeted maybe partly as a result of that.
So here's where it gets interesting, because at number 8, I have put another English central midfielder, which allows itself for an extremely direct comparison. Number 8 is James Ward-Prowse of Southampton. So basically what I'm saying is I think JWP is better than Henderson, which is probably a contentious point.
Yeah, I think it is. I think but I would argue that JWP's influence on matters on the pitch for Southampton probably trumps Henderson's influence on matters on the pitch for Liverpool right now. But maybe that's not the argument.
I'd say that, Henderson is definitely, his levels are definitely not where they were, whereas Ward-Prowse isn't quite there, but also the team have been an absolute shambles, and he's had a lot of pressure on himself to try and lift the gloom. There's been a lot of expectation on him to step up. I think he's taken quite a bit of stick, actually, compared to any other season I've known at Southampton. He's delivered he's scored a good goal at Fulham. Obviously, I was at, but I've seen him score a couple of other important ones too. And now he's got a new manager. So, look, maybe he actually gets a new life out of here. Like today, as we're recording this, Jesse Marsh getting the Southampton job might be what Ward-Prowse needs. So I think I think James Ward-Prowse is still worthy of being high enough on this list. Yeah, I think he's still got it in him.
So, I mean, I'd say that
I would have flipped them, Sam, but I don't mind it, if you know what I mean.
So I think they're both very good all-round players, and they're both really good leaders, and they're both very good at the nuts and bolts elements of midfield. But Ward-Prowse has that very special extra talent of free kicks. So I don't think anyone would dispute a top 10 spot for him, but the order of Ward-Prowse, Henderson and McGinn, I think, would differ based on your allegiance and your general experiences.
The problem you've got here is on social media, there are 100,000 times as many Liverpool fans in the world as there are Southampton fans, and you're going to be hearing from them rather than the Saints fans.
Well, maybe I'll have to spark an army. But we'll move up to number 7, and this is where I put Lewis Dunk of Brighton, who is just one of those players who just goes on and on and on. Still at Brighton, still doing great. Ever present this season, 21 starts, super solid. Brighton are having another really good season, and Lewis Dunk is the captain, and he is at the heart of it all again. And this is one of those weird things where, like, you sit down and you create this list, and sometimes you're surprised by what you churn out. And Lewis Dunk, me rating Lewis Dunk as a better overall footballer than Ward-Prowse, Henderson, and McGinn is not something you necessarily think is going to happen. But then you look back at it and you go, yeah, no, I think that's about right.
His level is higher, I think, generally across the course of this season. And obviously you can look back historically, and you have to do so to an extent. I think that's evident at the bottom half of this table that you've put together of anything. But there does feel like a point where you go, Lewis Dunk has been part of a very good Brighton defence. He has been part of a very good side who are currently higher than both Aston Villa, Liverpool and Southampton in the table. Dunk's effect on that team is massive. And I think he's just been very solid. You know, earlier we mentioned Johnny Evans. This is where Johnny Evans was 3 seasons ago, isn't it? Like, this is probably, yeah. This is it. He is a reliable, rock solid servant who basically rarely puts a foot wrong, and ultimately has meant that he's been raised up this table into a place where he's in a Conference League spot. So it's what Brighton will be hoping for this season. It's what Dunk will be hoping for from his capacity. I think this is fair, mate. I'll be honest. I think it's fair. I really want to argue with you, but so far I'm finding it very difficult.
Well, there you go. Well, let's argue about this one. Number 6, the most polarising player on planet Earth, Harry Maguire of Manchester United.
Wow. Above Lewis Dunk.
Above Lewis Dunk. How do we feel?
This is a really hard one, isn't it? Because he hasn't actually done that much wrong in recent times. And even when he was playing badly, the mental stress that he was under feels hard to judge him by when things got so bad. And when you see him at the World Cup doing well, you remember like what he's capable of. He's getting in the United team occasionally still. He might be playing against Barcelona this week. Maybe we should judge it after that. Maybe we should judge it after he's played Barcelona. I don't know. Honestly, like knowing obviously his name was going to be in this list, I was expecting you to stick him in like 15 initially. And I was kind of pleased that I hadn't heard his name in the top 10. I didn't think you would put him this high. I didn't think you would. And
I don't think you can put him this high, Sam. I can't sit here and you go, if Jordan Henderson is having a bad
Liverpool
season,
fans are going to go mental about
Cup,
this.
Yeah, and I think they're probably right to. Like you can't sit here and be like, Maguire's had a really bad season. He's had a really bad couple of seasons, but he had a good World Cup, and then put Jordan Henderson 3 spots behind him. Like it doesn't make sense. Like, it doesn't add up.
Yeah, so I mean, this simultaneously feels too high and too low for Maguire for me, and I really struggled with it. And you do have to remind yourself of what he's capable at his best, which we saw at the World Cup. Genuinely very, very good, and like better than Jordan Henderson showed. So if we can agree that like Maguire and Henderson are having down seasons, but they both had good World Cups, who had a better World Cup? Harry Maguire. So that's kind of one way of rationalizing
Henderson's
it
having
in your
mind. Henderson's having a better Premier League season than Maguire, even if he's not playing well, because he's playing to begin with. And
it's marginal, though. It's still marginal.
I mean, look, in some stakes, negative exposure is worse than no exposure at all in some stakes, because we're just trying to work on what we see. But I find it really hard to put my finger on where he should be. But I think criticism of him is generally overblown. I think he has really good moments and he has really good performances. I think his top level is higher than Dunk and it's higher than Henderson.
I look, you know that I actually really like Harry Maguire, and I think the criticism of him is overblown. But I just don't think, on what we've literally witnessed over the past 2 years, it makes any sense to put him here ahead of some of the names you're putting. Yes, in terms of what he's potentially got in the tank, you can put in there, fine. But you're working on potentials, not on actually what they're displaying on a week-to-week basis. And I think that's probably unfair.
But it's difficult when he doesn't play every week. So what I've got to lean on is what he did at the World Cup, which was really good.
On, you put Jamal Lascelles in 19th because you haven't seen him play for ages. So on, if you're like, we're picking what some player had, that's not right. The fact that he can't get in this team.
You know that Jamal Lascelles is basically like a fringe level Premier League player, whereas Harry Maguire is well beyond that.
Harry Maguire is a Europa League level defender. That's what I've always said. And he's capable of playing for his side.
No, I think that that's hard. I think that you're wrong about Maguire being that level. I just think that, like, look, we'll find out whether United move him on or not. But the way to judge this, how many people just turned off the podcast, we won't know. But I reckon a lot of people aren't listening anymore.
Right. Okay. Here's one for you. Do you think Brighton would sell Lewis Dunk to sign Harry Maguire, or do you think they'd sign him and play him instead of Lewis Dunk?
No, I think there's a better way to scope out who would Tottenham sign, Lewis Dunk or Harry Maguire. They'd sign Harry Maguire.
I don't think they would.
I think they would.
I don't think the Brighton question's fair, because remember when I said Joe Roll was one of three men captaining their local teams? Well, Lewis Dunk is one of the three. And Ward-Prowse is the other. So Maguire.
I do.
I think more teams would sign Maguire, but I think that is somewhat reputation based and somewhat not necessarily fair. The fact that I have them 6 and 7 would suggest that I don't necessarily see that much difference between them. But yeah.
I mean, listen, when I woke up this morning, I did not think we would be debating Harry Maguire versus Lewis Dunk, but here we are. It's good times.
It's just always fun and games on the pod. All right, let's leave that slide.
Get the VAR stuff.
Well, this is it. If you're listening to this before the Champions League on Wednesday, you're like, why am I not just listening to the Champions League preview? That's last week's episode. You can go back and listen now. Yeah. Right, Sam, let's move on from Maguire and the ag surrounding it. Let's go onwards.
Okay. Top 5. And speaking of Spurs, this is where Hugo Lloris comes in. What's the matter now?
Stop. Well, Hugo Lloris has been dreadful. Spurs fans want him out.
He's a good goalkeeper. He's not elite, but he's a good goalkeeper.
He's the best player we've talked about so far. Yeah.
He is. Yeah. He is. World Cup finalist Hugo Lloris, who was excellent against England, annoyingly. I don't know what his future holds for him in terms of Spurs moving for the next 6 to 18 months, but I think he's a top 5 player here. I'll move into 4 swiftly before Jack explodes, and it's going to be Ruben Neves, who is Wolves captain for this season. Probably a fitting one because he's probably in his last campaign with Wolves, and as a bit of an adopted son of the area, it's really quite cool for his final chapter with Wolves to be as a captain. I think he's
Liverpool
really playing up
next
to that.
season.
He's really playing up to the captain's role. I think he is a proper leader. He's also an absolutely tremendous footballer.
Yeah.
And I'll take a pause at 3 to reserve the top 2. Declan Rice, captain of West Ham, another tremendous footballer, another future £100 million midfielder probably, and that kind of says it all. We're talking about vastly different levels, aren't we, from 4 downwards?
Yeah, I was gonna kick off about Neves being too low, but you've put Rice said I would probably switch them, but that's just me.
Well, you're
No,
Irish
would you?
and want to be
I love
Portuguese.
Neves.
So that
I think
absolutely
Neves,
makes sense.
I think Neves is absolutely sensational. Like I really do. I think he's the complete midfielder in so many ways these days. His kind of development from a very, very talented player who came in at Wolves, left at Porto side where he had been the youngest captain ever, came into a Wolves side in the Championship and was the figurehead of that revolution. I think, given the fact that Wolves have been a bit up and down, Neves' development into a really, really complete midfielder. I mean, he was good to begin with. He's now excellent. I think sometimes goes under the radar. So I was going to kick off, but I think you're probably okay. And I know I've worked out who's above him. And I think that maybe 4 is just about fair in that regard. I might have him 3, but I think 4 is probably.
Yeah, I thought he was older than he is. I've got to say. I was just like,
he started
how
at
much?
17.
What's the age gap here between Rice and Neves? It's 1 year.
Yeah.
Neves is 25 and Declan Rice is 24. I would not honestly have thought that, like, given just like what we've seen in their careers so far. I would have thought there was probably 3 years between them. So, that actually does throw up a bit of a conundrum, because Wolves' season obviously was disastrous first half. Second half, it's been really good so far, and he's been really good so far. Declan Rice, obviously, in a similar situation at West Ham, like terrible first half of the season. Even some of the West Ham fans were turning on him a little bit, but the last few weeks, like,
he's been exceptional.
He's been exceptional. Like, I pointed out that Newcastle game recently. I just thought he was outstanding in that game. So you're right. This is a tiny, tiny margin. I think like these two are on a par, probably. Would they make a good combination in midfield? Maybe someone should just sign the pair of them in the summer. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Quite the duo. Duo.
Would be, yeah.
I think that'd be very interesting. Fair. I think that's probably about fair. I think there's a gap from, as you say, Sam, from 4 down. There's some quite clear tier gaps, isn't there, in this? Maybe it's something we can look at some point. But there are very much like the lads who are like, what are you still doing at the club? Then above them, there's like mostly here for morale at this point. Then there's like still making an impact, still leading from the front, genuinely well good. They're the 5 tiers, aren't they? So let's get into the top 2, who are the top of genuinely well good.
Yeah, I mean, this is very difficult to split, 2 and 1. And it was almost a coin flip last night when I was deciding this. And I'm reading my notes again, and I'm still not sure. But at 2, I'm going to put Martin Odegaard.
Oh, no, he hasn't done it. I think
he's a real contender for number 1. But and I started this process, I assumed that he would be number 1. The lowest he could possibly be, can we agree, is second. This is like the absolute floor for Martin Odegaard. He is unbelievable footballer, unbelievable season. A genuine surprise choice to me as captain, actually, of Arsenal Football Club. But I think he's carrying out the role really well. He's turned out to be a good pick, and his importance to this team is, knows no bounds. So that means at number 1, and just pipping him, and I'm sort of paying my respects to a very, very good footballer over a long period of time, is Ilkay Gundogan of Man City. I think Odegaard is having a better season than Gundogan. I think you'll find many people disagreeing with that.
I don't think there are many people having a better season than Martin Odegaard, to be perfectly honest with you.
But I think I'd say that Gundogan is probably the better overall player, generally speaking, and I think he probably deserves a nudge of respect. And I think he might just fall into that category where if you're very, very good for a very long time, you get passed over just a tiny bit sometimes when your eyes are attracted to the bright new flowers. And by that, I mean someone like Odegaard's emergence over the last 12 months. There's not a lot in this, but I'll take Gundo at 1 and Odegaard at 2.
I'm sure there'll be a lot of Arsenal fans screaming at their headphones right now, but I don't mind it as much as I mind some of your other ones. I think I would have. I don't know. I might have shaded Ødegaard one just in the form he's in, but I think you're absolutely right in that Gundogan deserves all the respect for the consistency of performance as well. Like, can you recall in Ilkay Gundogan having bad games for Manchester City? He's just always minimum 7 out of 10 every week. He just delivers time and time and time again. And in a season where City have been chopping and changing and things have mucked about and Pep's been doing full Pep at times, Gundogan has seemed to be like a relatively sensible head of calm in the middle of it. And I do think the City just look much better with him on the pitch. Those late runs into the box. He obviously scored that goal against Villa at the weekend. He scored the goals that took City to the title at the end of last year. It's kind of understated, I think, the amount he plays a role in this City team and the amount that Pep trusts and loves him. And that's got to be worth something, right?
I think it's Ødegaard at one. I think I'd have gone Ødegaard. There's so many ways you can try and weigh this up, and it is extremely difficult. I wouldn't have wanted to put this list together at all. So fair play for even attempting it. There's just so many factors that you have to try and account for here. Like, these two guys are completely different ends of their career too. Like, Gundogan might be his last season at Man City, like 32. They're looking to, obviously move into another new era at Man City to keep progressing. And Arsenal have just done that by putting all their faith in Ødegaard as the face of the new era. But what they've done, and what Ødegaard's done so impressively, is actually managed to live up to the expectations that were laid on him from the age of about 14, and he consistently was unable to reach because he just kept being sent out on a loan. I just quickly looked at what the loans were. It's like from Real Madrid, it was like Herenveen, Vitesse, Real Sociedad, then Arsenal. And it just looked like the guy wasn't going to get the break. Like, he should probably be in the Real Madrid team.
Real Sociedad. He was unbelievable in that Real Sociedad loan. He was absolutely outrageous for them.
The will and the belief in himself to keep going through those times when still people are starting to doubt him too. Like, that's the toughest thing. We've seen a lot of players, once they get to 20 and they've been hyped up for the last 5-6 years, struggle to live up to that billing. I can't even imagine what that's like mentally, to have everyone expect you to be the best player on the pitch every time you walk out there, especially if you're struggling to do it. And he's got to Arsenal and he's done it so well that they've made him captain and now they're top of the league. Like, I say they're top of the league. They might not be by some time. By the time some people listen to this, but they're in a title race at the very least with him as the captain. And he is the best player in the league over the course of this season so far. He's been the standout player, like Haaland, obviously, for different reasons. But Ødegaard as a footballer, the consistent performance levels, I think he's probably won,
It's a very compelling argument, Dean.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's a good argument, and I appreciate it. I think this is a very, very tough call. There's a hair's breadth between them at the very best, right? This is where we're at, and that's credit to Ødegaard. To be honest, the fact that he's in the same conversation as someone like Ilkay Gundogan, who's been so wonderful for so many years, is testament to what he's put on the pitch this season and what he's delivered for Arsenal.
It kind of reflects the title race, though, doesn't it? Because we keep saying credit to Arsenal for even being in this discussion, credit to Ødegaard for even being in this discussion, yet we're all going to give just the edge to Man City anyway. I just presume Man City win the league. I just presume Gundogan is a bit of a better player. Like, it's just that thing because of what we've watched in years gone by, and Man City have just always been a step above of everybody else. So we're struggling in our mindset to accept that anything
that might have changed.
That could change right now, so suddenly and so unexpectedly.
Yeah, maybe that is it. We're only human after all. We have our biases and we have our things to overcome. Maybe the fact that Arsenal didn't win at the weekend and Gundogan was so good, you never know. Maybe that, because we're talking about a hair's breadth, maybe that influenced me. I don't know. I watched Gundogan run the show on Sunday. Maybe that's the difference. Maybe if you ask me next week, I've got it too, and I've got it the other way around. But
maybe on Thursday.
Either way, it's very tough. It's very tight. I mean, the good battle between Rice and Ruben Neves for third. Great battle between Gundogan and Ødegaard for first. And a hell of a battle A hell of a battle between Pontus Jansson and Luka Milivojevic for 20th.
I'll never forget the Lewis dunk, Maguire. Oh, that'll live with me forever.
That will be with you for a long, long time to come.
Yeah, on my deathbed, I'll be thinking, Maguire dunk. That was the moment. That was the moment
That was
of our.